On the night of May 26, 1942, the Gazala campaign shifted from preparation to motion. For weeks, the British Eighth Army had been watching a defensive system that seemed to make sense on paper. Boxes, minefields, guns, reserves, and a long line running from the coast down toward Bir Hakeim. Then, Rommel moved, and the battlefield began to lose its orderly shape. The Axis attack did not begin as a simple head-on assault against the strongest part of the line. It opened with deception, darkness, and movement, turning the Gazala position into a test of whether the British could understand danger quickly enough to respond before the whole system was pulled out of alignment.
If you would like to move beyond the podcast, you can see my available books at militaryauthor.me. And at trackpads.com, you will find magazines and galleries with hundreds of thousands of photos and videos to explore.
The British expected an attack, but expecting an attack is not the same as knowing its true direction, weight, and timing. Along the northern part of the Gazala line, closer to the coast, the defensive positions looked like the obvious place for a major blow. The coast road, the approaches toward Tobruk, and the more crowded northern sector all seemed to invite a direct Axis effort. Rommel wanted British attention fixed there, while his mobile force moved far to the south. That was the dangerous beauty of the plan. It used the line's own shape against it, threatening the front while preparing to strike around the flank. Rommel's offensive, often known as Operation Venetia, depended on doing two things at once. In the north, Axis forces would create the impression of a frontal assault against the Gazala defenses, fixing British attention and holding troops in place. In the south, the armored and mobile formations would sweep around the British flank near Bir Hakeim and then turn north and east behind the line. If the plan worked, the Eighth Army would face a crisis of orientation as much as a crisis of firepower. A defense built to face west might suddenly find the main danger moving behind it, threatening headquarters, supply routes, and armored reserves from unexpected directions. The plan was bold, but it was not simple. Moving large armored forces at night across desert ground required discipline, navigation, fuel control, and luck. Vehicles had to keep formation without the clear reference points that daylight provided. Columns could stretch out, lose contact, run into difficult going, or become separated in the dark. Drivers had to follow guides, tracks, stars, compass bearings, and the movement of vehicles ahead of them. A night march could protect a force from observation, but it could also turn order into confusion before the first major clash began. Rommel was gambling not only against the British, but against distance, darkness, and mechanical failure. For the soldiers on the British side, the first signs of the attack did not reveal the whole design. Noise, shell fire, probes, movement, and reports from forward positions could all suggest that the main blow was falling in one place when it was really developing somewhere else. That was part of the problem with a battlefield as wide as Gazala. A commander could not simply stand on a hill and see the battle unfold. Information arrived in fragments. One unit might report contact in the north, another movement in the south, while higher headquarters tried to decide which message represented the true danger and which was part of a deception. The northern feint mattered because it gave Rommel's southern movement time. Axis pressure against the front did not need to break the British line immediately to serve its purpose. It had to create uncertainty, hold defensive forces in place, and make commanders hesitate before shifting reserves southward. A feint is not harmless just because it is not the main attack. It works by forcing the enemy to pay attention, to spend mental energy, and to keep troops ready against a threat that might become real at any moment. At Gazala, the northern pressure helped make the British command problem harder before the main armored columns had fully revealed themselves. Meanwhile, to the south, the main Axis striking force moved around the end of the British position.
German and Italian mobile formations, including panzers, Italian armor, reconnaissance units, artillery, engineers, and transport columns, were all part of the movement. This was not just a parade of tanks racing through open space. It was a combined force trying to carry the means of battle with it: fuel, ammunition, repair capability, anti-tank guns, signals, and enough infantry support to survive once contact became heavy. The wide sweep was meant to place Rommel behind the line, but getting there was only the first problem. Staying there would be much harder. Bir Hakeim stood near the southern end of the British system, and its presence complicated the Axis movement from the beginning. The Free French Box did not seal the desert completely, but it made the southern flank more dangerous than an empty gap. Any Axis force passing near it had to consider the risk of fire, delay, and interference with supply routes. The defenders at Bir Hakeim would soon become a major obstacle to Rommel's timetable, but even on the opening night, the position mattered because it helped define the danger zone through which the Axis movement had to pass. The flank was open, but it was not undefended. The British response depended on recognizing that the main battle was shifting. That sounds obvious after the fact, but in the moment it was profoundly difficult. Reports had to be received, judged, and acted upon, while armored brigades prepared to move across long distances under uncertain orders. A mistaken response could be disastrous. Send armor north, and the southern sweep might roll behind the line. Send armor south too quickly or in fragments, and it might run into Axis anti-tank defenses without enough support. Hold the reserves too long, and Rommel might gain freedom of movement. Gazala was becoming exactly the kind of battle the British box system was supposed to handle, but handling it required speed and clarity. The opening movement also revealed the close connection between maneuver and supply. Rommel's columns could not simply appear behind the British line and remain effective by willpower. Every mile around the flank consumed fuel, increased wear on vehicles, and lengthened the route back to secure supply. If the Axis force moved too far too fast, it risked becoming a powerful spearhead with a fragile shaft behind it. That was why the minefields and boxes mattered, even when they were bypassed. They could interfere with the routes that kept the mobile force alive. Rommel was trying to unhinge the British defense, but in doing so, he was also placing his own army in a position where supply could become a battlefield emergency. There was a psychological effect to the night attack that is easy to miss. A defensive system feels stronger before the enemy moves. The boxes are marked, the minefields are known, the artillery plans are prepared, and the armored reserves have assigned roles. Once enemy columns are reported in unexpected places, that confidence begins to fracture. Units ask where the main threat is. Commanders wonder whether reports are accurate, and every decision seems to carry the risk of reacting to the wrong problem. Rommel understood this kind of pressure. He was not merely trying to destroy British tanks on the opening night. He was trying to make the Eighth Army fight the wrong battle for as long as possible. Yet the night of May 26th should not be mistaken for an instant victory. The Axis movement was dangerous, but it was also risky and vulnerable. The desert was not empty. British armored forces were still powerful, and the Gazala line had not collapsed simply because Rommel had begun his sweep. In fact, the days that followed would show moments when the Axis force itself appeared trapped and exposed. The opening move flipped the board, but it did not decide the game. That distinction is essential, because Gazala was not won by one dramatic maneuver alone. It was shaped by what both armies did after the maneuver created crisis. The campaign opener matters because it shows armored warfare as an argument over time, direction, and understanding. Rommel's night movement around the southern flank turned the Gazala line from a prepared defensive position into a moving problem. The British still had boxes, tanks, guns, mines, aircraft, and reserves,
But now those assets had to be coordinated against a threat appearing where it was not supposed to be. The night of May 26th did not destroy the Eighth Army, and it did not guarantee the fall of Tobruk. It did something more subtle and just as dangerous. It forced the British to react to Rommel's rhythm. And once an army begins reacting instead of shaping the battle, even a strong defensive system can start to come apart.
You've been listening to Famous Tank Battles. These battles were never just about machines. They were about doctrine, terrain, firepower, logistics, and the hard problem of turning shock into victory. For more military history writing and books, visit militaryauthor.me. And for magazines, podcasts, and a massive archive of military photos and video, visit trackpads.com. Thanks for listening.